Hi, everybody. Can you guys all hear me okay? Thumbs up? Yes, yes, great. So my name is Julia Klein, and let me go ahead, and I'm with the city of San Mateo. So let me go ahead and share a slide. Let's see. All right, can everybody see the slide with the map and the two questions? Nick, are you able to see it? Okay, perfect. Okay, so good evening, everybody. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that we are going to be covering 4 of the 10 study areas in this group. And there's 2 key questions that we will go into. But before we do that, these questions I think you may have seen already, but I'll go ahead and just read the questions, and then we'll go into the actual study area information. So keeping in mind that the key questions here this evening is this the right range of alternatives to study? And then are there ideas or changes that are missing that you would like to evaluate? And just so that you know who's here presenting, and also, well, after we do the introductions, we'll go ahead and have everybody in this room do an introduction for themselves and let us know sort of which stakeholder group you are. So my name is Julia Klein. I work for the city of San Mateo, and I'm in the interim planning manager. With me is Nicholas. Nicholas will raise his hand. He's senior planner, and he's also assisting and will be note-taking this evening. So I see, I'm just going to go across the screen and just ask people to unmute themselves and just introduce themselves. Catherine Cross. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, hi.
Yes, I've worked and lived in San Mateo since 1976. I've seen a lot of changes, and I'm the president of the St. Vincent de Paul Conference at my church, and I know we need housing desperately, but I just want it to be reasonable. And I live in San Mateo, and I've lived here, a long time, so I'm thinking about staying here. Thank you.
Okay, Karen, I think you're next across the screen. Would you like to introduce yourself? You don't have to if you don't want to.
She's still muted.
Are you able to?
Oh, okay. Let's hope it stays there. Karen Moen, and I live on the east side of San Mateo. I'm a homeowner and a longtime resident of San Mateo. In the late 80s, worked in San Mateo, or no, from mid 70s, worked in San Mateo, and I'm now retired. My concern is what is feeling like for those of us on the east side of San Mateo, and I'm on the Foster City San Mateo border, an inequitable distribution of housing and tremendous traffic and impacts, as well as safety of intersections and safety of community streets that the tremendous amount of development is putting onto us, whereas friends of mine who live in Baywood and San Mateo Park and the Aragon neighborhoods and so forth don't see any of the problems that I do.
So thank you, Karen. I'm going to ask, since we only have a limited amount of time in terms of this session and covering the 4 areas, if everybody is okay, doing very brief sort of introduction, or are we okay with skipping the rest of the introduction?
We can also ask them to put in the chat if they'd like, introduce themselves and say a word or two about their relationship to the city.
That would be great. So we can save the time for the sessions. Is that okay, everybody? You guys know where the chat button is at the bottom of your screen? And I apologize not giving everybody enough time to introduce in person, but I think there's a strong interest in covering the 4 study areas that we have today. So go ahead and enter yourself, your information in the chat, and that will be saved. And
Julia, you just muted yourself.
I'm not sure how that happens, but thank you. I'm just going to ask everybody to introduce themselves through chat. That way we have preserving the most of the time for the actual study area discussions. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So we roughly have about...
Before
Yes.
we already have a couple of questions about how to ask questions and who to direct questions to in the chat. For example, if we need help, who should we direct questions to? Should we direct them to Diana?
Yes, please. You can direct them to me. I'm happy to read your questions and share them with everyone. So go ahead and put them in the chat.
So let's go ahead and go through the discussion so that we can do that. And so we have 4 study areas we'll be focusing on. So we can focus on 1 or 2 of them at a time. I would recommend that we do the easier ones first, but if that way, if people have more interest in the downtown area, we can save that for last and spend more time on that. So again, the 2 questions that we're going to be asking is basically, is this the right range of alternatives to study? And then is there anything else missing? So if there are comments, verbal comments or questions, try to use chat as much as possible. That way we're capturing all the questions, and then Diana can read and make sure everybody is able to hear the questions. So the key differences between the 3 alternatives are that alternative A has the least change in designations and the lowest residential growth. Alternative B, across all the different all the different 3 study areas, are basically going to be highlighting the highest residential growth, and then it spreads growth and sort of mid-range heights evenly across all of the 10 study areas. Alternative C has the highest residential growth, and it concentrates growth in the tallest heights and densities near transit areas. And we'll go into that in more detail in each of each of the 4 study areas. So study area 1, I think this is one of the easier, smaller areas to focus on. You'll see that the land use of the existing El Camino, this is the north segment of El Camino, is focused on medium density housing. And there's some areas that are high density housing, and that's the current land use designation. And then there are some offices that are along here, and sort of mixed in, that are executive office with high density overlay. So the 3 alternatives, A, B, and C, the data for each of these scenarios show that in terms of net new housing versus existing housing, and then net new jobs versus existing. So this information is important in showing that the key difference between these 3 alternatives are based on the mix of land uses, and these are the land use colors, and how those land use color changes result in a total net new housing in this portion of El Camino. And so I wanted to see if anybody has any questions at this point about study area 1. A show of hands if you have any questions or any comments.
Or you can plop them into chat and I will read them off.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't,
we have a question. What are the cross streets on El Camino?
So you'll see that Tilton Avenue is right here. And so this is one major cross street. Are you guys able to see that on the map? Do you need me to zoom in? Or you're okay? Okay, perfect. So Tilton Avenue, it crosses along here. If we look, this is Peninsula. So it's along Burlingame. And we do have Poplar Avenue, which is also a major street that crosses along here.
The next question is, why is study area 1 so small?
Small in terms of the housing units and the jobs.
I think it means it's literally area that.
Oh,
only
geographic
looking at the
area.
northern part of all of study area 1, which is actually cut up into 3 segments, right?
Mm-hmm. We're only looking at one portion of El Camino, correct?
That's
Going once, going twice. Okay, great.
so for study area 1, the city is really just looking at changing the mix of housing types.
Primarily, it is mixing up the housing. There is a designation for neighborhood commercial in this area in alternative B. And then you'll see that there's a small portion in alternative C where this is looking at mixed use. And there's a difference between that versus alternative B, which shows it's still residential. And then in this same, it's sort of a medium mixed use. But primarily the majority of El Camino, this northern segment is staying medium and high density residential. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next segment. This is the downtown. So the key differences in this area, as you'll note, is along here. So this is reflective of what the current zoning is. So this is medium mixed use. You'll see that changes along here and also along the hospital area, the medical office area here. And so these are the 2 areas that we'll see the mixed use high in alternative B, and that's different than alternative A. And then as you go into alternative C, there's more of that mixed use high surrounding the sort of the periphery of the downtown retail core area. And then this segment that you see in the middle, that's the lighter blue. This is the city's downtown historic district. And so that is being retained at this existing medium mixed use. So there's no proposed changes in that area. You will also see that there is a change between alternative C and alternative B in terms of the residential along here, along the buffer here. And the key difference is that the higher concentration, the higher height and the higher density is along the middle. And then there's a transition and a buffer with the lower residential along the edge to transition into the lower density existing neighborhoods in North Central and in Central.
We have a question. How do we rank these alternatives in terms of existing stakeholders leveraging their holdings to perform rent-seeking behaviors from future residents? I would like to see the alternative that allows the greatest freedom of entry. Just a note from Lindsay that says we're halfway through our first breakout.
So we are not asking people to rank any of these alternatives. The main purpose of this evening, as I mentioned earlier, is to ask if this is the right range of alternatives to study. We've received community input from earlier workshops and public comments in saying that there's a range in this community, a range of different land uses that people would like to see studied. And so at this point, we're asking the community to see if this is the right range to study. And so that's a key purpose right now. We're not asking anybody to rank. We don't have the technical studies yet to be able to share with the community. That happens afterwards. After we've gone through this phase, which is confirming the range of alternative study, we'll get into the technical studies. Once the technical studies are done, we'll share that with the community. And that at that point, there can be more discussions about what are the uses that people feel are more appropriate. So right now it's just, we need a range to study. And so that's what we're asking. We're asking for community input on this range to study.
Just a side note that if you, it's great that so many people are asking questions. If you've asked more than one question, I may not get to it right away. I'm trying to make sure that everybody who has a question, who hasn't asked one, gets theirs answered. From Raj, are there any proposed changes in the alternative C to the businesses in the downtown area?
Not the businesses per se. The land uses are staying, with the change from this sort of light blue medium mixed use to mixed use high. It does not eliminate any type of businesses or any permitted uses. So this is more along the side of land uses for the future, and impacts on existing businesses are not going to be, it's not changing the land use so that there is no option for businesses. So this is retaining businesses, it's retaining that mixed use category.
Great, thank you. Next question, what does mixed use include? Is it housing, office, and retail?
All of those. So it's a variety of uses that can fit onto, and be mixed together. So it's all of those.
Great. From Ellen, does the middle map and right map show that the medical center will be open for redevelopment to include housing?
The zoning designation would provide that opportunity should the property owner decide to do something different with their property. So that's part of the intent, is to open up those opportunities in the future with this designation to mixed use high, and in both B and C.
Okay, the next one is a question, but it's actually a comment. Why don't alternatives A and B have the step down in height and density in the quote unquote panhandle? If that's something that, I don't know if you can address that, but that's definitely something that we would like to capture as a comment, either in the survey online, and I'm sure that Nicholas is taking notes as well. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that, Julia?
That's exactly the type of comment that we're looking for from the community. So thank you for providing that comment.
Great. What is the difference between residential low, medium, and high?
So in terms of the, there's a difference in density, and there's also a difference in terms of the height. So let me share a different slide.
Our timekeeper has told me that it's close to time to be look at the remaining 2 study areas if that's what people want to do, unless you want to stay with this one.
We can provide a response to that following this meeting.
Okay.
The response.
Great.
Okay, so let's go
Excuse
ahead.
me. I'm seeing a lot of direct messages to me, and I'm performing a note-taking role, so it's difficult for me to review those simultaneously. I'd just like to ask people to point those to Diana specifically, so that Diana can make sure everybody gets a fair chance to get their voices out there. If you send it to me, it may get missed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So why don't we go ahead and go to the other 2 sections, and then if we have time, we can come back to study area 4. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
So study area 5, this is the North San Mateo Drive segment, as you'll note here. So the existing mix of uses that are executive office, neighborhood commercial, medium and high density, and also regional commercial. And that's applies to the mix of uses along this segment, as well as the Peninsula Avenue corridor right there. So in terms of the 3 alternatives, we have alternative A, preserving most of the mix of uses that are out there today, including the shopping center up here. Alternative B changes some of that from office low to mixed use in the middle here, and also in the shopping center here. And then alternative C changes the mix of uses here along this portion of Peninsula. In the middle, it reverts back to what we have in alternative A. But there is a change along the southern portion of to high density residential, as well as mixed use high. Are there any comments or questions about these 3 alternatives?
I have one comment. Given recent rates of growth, only alternative C is really plausible. Most likely, we'll have to do another general plan in 5 years with any other selection. Question, how close is south end of this to the train station?
So the train station is actually right here where my cursor is. So this is North B Street, which is downtown. What you see that's in very light pink at B right here, that's the Mi Rancho Market. And so the train station is just south of that. So it's right at that edge. So what you see in terms of this dash line, anytime you see a dash line in any of the maps, this is within a half mile of an existing Caltrain station, including the Burlingame station up here. Okay, if there's no more questions, let's go on to the next one. That way we can come back to number 4. So number 7 is the North Shoreview area and the Shoreview area. Existing line uses include medium and high densities, service uses, as well as neighborhood commercial with the shopping center. That's the Chavez Market up there. And alternative A is looking at uses, providing a transition with some of the service commercial uses that are along Amplet. And that changes in alternative B to high density residential. And then in alternative C, it changes out even further, but it's instead of high density, it's looking at medium density. There are changes as well to the neighborhood commercial area that's over here in terms of the shopping center. It's going from low mixed use to medium mixed use to high mixed use. And so to further orient, if anybody has any questions about orientation, this is the school, the elementary school that's out here. Okay, are there any questions?
One person mentioned why the residential high and option C, why not mixed use high?
That's a good comment.
And so I wanted to make sure that you knew that was a good comment that we will make note of. And then someone, Keith, says, I don't see the historic resources mapped in study area 5. There are many.
We've shown properties that are located within a designated district. There are several individual properties throughout the city that have gone through an historic evaluation. There is information about that, but we're not including in this level of detail because it'll get too busy if we zoom into that individual parcel. Here, what we're looking at is just the colors for land uses. So
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we just got the notice that you have to jump off and go to your next rooms, Julia and Nicholas.
yes.
So for everybody else, you're going to stay here in the room with me, and then another set of presenters are going to come and present. So hang on while Julia and Nicholas jump off. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry we didn't get to everything, but we did get some good comments. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
And now, who do we have next? We have Brian Alexander, who will be coming in shortly.
And if I use the time to get people to do some introductions, they can. Oh, Brian just started.
Yep. Hang on a second. Hi, Brian.
Hello.
I'm going to put a note in the chat that says Brian started now. Brian's
Sorry.
in the house. Brian's...
We were finishing up our very last study area. We didn't quite get to finish study area 8. So a word of warning for everybody in this group that we have we have the biggest study area to talk about, which is 3, and it's the main El Camino corridor. So it takes up a little bit of time.
Can I say one reminder? If you have comments or questions and you want to put them in the chat, make sure that you direct them to me, not to Sandy or to Brian, because I'm the one that's supposed to collect them and I need them all. So let me know.
It looks like I still might be missing my...
No, Sandy's on.
No, Summer is also shifting with me too. But that's okay. I think we can go ahead and get started here. Oh, there she is.
She's on. She's on.
Hey, everybody. I thought we were supposed to go back to the main room and they were going to tell us when to go. But
We're all learning as we go here.
yeah. All right. Let me share my screen with you guys. Hey, can everybody see?
Yes. Okay, so you all heard the sort of overview probably from your last facilitators, so we can skip a chunk of that part, but I do want to at least orient you to the areas that we're going to be talking about. So we have 2 sections of study area 1, which runs along El Camino Real. So it's the area from downtown, so basically the southern part of Central Park down to 92. We're also going to be talking about study area 3, which is that big orange mass in the middle of your screen. So that includes most of El Camino between 92 all the way down to the southern end of the Hillsdale Mall, and also includes Bay Meadows and the 2 Caltrain stations and their immediate surrounding areas. And then we're also going to be talking about study area 8, which is the parcels that are adjacent to the 92 and 101 interchange.
Hey, are there any study areas that anyone specifically wants to talk about? We can start there since we're limited on time.
And you could drop those in the chat if there's an area you want to make sure that we discuss in particular. Otherwise, we can just jump right in.
We have 3 and 8 seem to be definitely 3, 3, 3, and 3 seem to be the top numbers, and the 8 in there.
All right. Sounds just like last time. Let's get started.
Say, don't take it personally, Summer, because Summer has been assigned the 2 1s. So,
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure they assigned me 8. I'm in the 8 group for a reason too, but I'm not. Okay, here we go.
all right. So study area 3 is, like I mentioned, all along El Camino Real from the southern end of study area 1. So that's about 16th Avenue, all the way down to the southern part of Hillsdale Shopping Center. And it includes the area around the Hillsdale Caltrain station and also the Hayward Park Caltrain station and Bay Meadows and the event center. So it's a lot of real estate to cover. And so I will walk through each of these alternatives. And if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to drop them into the chat. But essentially, as far as the highlights go, for alternative A, Burrell Square Shopping Center is a mixed-use medium designation. 25th Avenue, which is where a lot of those shops are in that corridor to the west of El Camino, would be a mixed-use low designation. And then Hillsdale Mall is a combination of commercial regional and mixed-use medium. So just as a reminder, mixed-use medium is a 4 to 7 story type of land use that could include residential, it could include retail, and a number of things. So it's kind of a cross between a few different land uses. So alternative B, in this scenario, Burrell Square is residential medium. So that's 4 to 7 story residential land use. The 25th Avenue corridor is a mixed use medium. So it's a slightly denser mixed use designation than the previous slide. I think that was a mixed use low. And then Hillsdale Mall, again, is a mixed use and commercial regional combination. And you'll notice as we go through these that many of the parcels to the east of the Caltrain railroad tracks are largely the same across all 3. And that's mostly because they represent either Bay Meadows or the event center, a recently constructed project or a project that's currently in development. So like the Concar project is included here, Station Park Green, and all the projects that are part of the Bay Meadows specific plan are incorporated into all 3 of the alternatives here. So much of the change that we're talking about is happening along El Camino Real and to the west of the Caltrain tracks. I know this is a lot to take in. So if anybody has any questions, comments, again, as a reminder, we're asking if this is the right range of scenarios across these 3 alternatives. And if there's anything that we're missing or things that you'd like to see evaluated that we haven't included here.
You're,
Not
there you
seeing
go.
any comments or questions for this particular area.
Okay, we can also leave this up for a second because I know it's a lot to digest. There are a lot of colors on the screen.
You can also raise your hand too if you'd prefer to give a verbal comment.
We have one question is, when will traffic impacts be considered? These are all will be studied through the environmental review and during the evaluation period. And then Debbie wrote a comment, which really appreciate, and that's definitely a good comment to consider putting in the survey online. I like the mixed use options in Alt A and C for Burrell Square instead of residential. And then Leora asked, how come Hillsdale Shopping Center isn't mixed use high? Looks weird between the two dark blue zones. That is a comment, and definitely want to record that.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah Harris says,
I'm sorry, Diana, could you repeat that again so I can capture it? Thank you.
Yeah. How come Hillsdale Shopping Center isn't mixed use high? It looks weird between the two dark blue zones. And then someone has asked, the dark blue mixed use high, please explain what that means.
So that could be a combination of things. It could be a residential project. Essentially, it means it's 8+ stories, but it could be a residential project that has retail on the ground floor. It could be a combination of office space and retail. It could be a couple of different things, but the mixed use high designation means that it's an 8+ story land use.
Okay. If you're not getting anything else, we can move on to 8.
Sure.
Any other comments coming in, Diana?
The development plans make a lot of sense. My concern is that the infrastructure grows with the plan. I do not see the increased transit access. Another comment is 25th Avenue has small lot sizes and should stay low. Thank you for your comments.
All right, let's get started on study area 8.
We will be at our halfway mark in about 4 minutes.
Okay. So if people continue to have comments about 3, we can also come back to that. It sounds like we might have a little extra time. But study area 8, as I mentioned, is the 101 and 92 interchange area. So right now, this area includes the Crossroads office complex, the Marriott that's on the west side of 101, and the office complex that's just to the north of that. It also includes the Parkside Plaza and the fish market area just to the north of 92. And then some additional parcels that are just to the south on the east side there. I think the apple fritter location is over there, and then there's another office park that's currently there now. And so here we have all 3 side by side. It's a little smaller, so it doesn't take up a whole page on its own, but the main differences here, as you can see, that parcel to the north side is a residential low in A and C, but a residential medium in the middle B alternative. The office space and the Marriott generally stay the same across all 3, so that office high is the same in A, B, and C. The parcels that are just to the west of that, so that's where the Peninsula Y, and then there's another retail spot that's just to the north on Concar. Those are either mixed use low in alternative A, or mixed use medium in B and C. And then you see some additional changes on the east part. So where Parkside Plaza is in study area A, that's a mixed use low. So again, that's 1 to 3 stories mixed use. There's a residential medium for study area B, which would be a 4 to 7 story residential project, and then a mixed use medium in an alternative C. And then that larger parcel that's just to the south of that, so below where it says Fashion Island Boulevard, is a medium office in study area A or alternative A. It's a low residential in alternative B, and then a medium residential in alternative C. So those are sort of the main highlights in terms of the changes and the differences from A to B to C for this particular study area. Have any questions or comments?
Yes. A question, B and C have the same numbers. What's the difference?
So in this case, yes, they are roughly the same for study area 8. So it looks like it's a matter of where the residential is built. So in study area B, Parkside Plaza accounts for some of that residential medium, whereas in study area C, it's that office park that's just south of Fashion Island Boulevard that has a residential medium designation. So they roughly have the same number of new homes and new populations across B and C. It's just a matter of where those residential parcels are being built.
We have another question. Can you explain why the east side areas and Parkside Plaza are considering a fairly significant range of use between office medium in alternative A and residential low in alternative B?
Can you read the first part of that again, Diana?
Yeah. Can you explain why the east side areas and Parkside Plaza are considering a fairly significant range of use between office medium in alternative A and residential low in alternative B?
Okay, I see what they're saying. Yeah, so it's that larger parcel south of Parkside Plaza. So I think that is sort of trying to capture a range of possible outcomes for the next 20 years for that particular parcel. If you think that we are missing an option there, or you disagree with something that we have or think it's unrealistic, we'd also love to hear your specific feedback on that too.
Great. A comment, cell phone service southeast of the highway intersection may be sketchy. That may impact office or commercial use. Thank you for your comment. We'll make sure we record it. We're at the halfway mark, just wanting you to know.
Excuse me, can you clarify where that cell phone was? Was
I
that
think it was
92?
Southeast of the highway intersection.
Okay, southeast. Thank you.
So I think we have it as office medium and A. So I think the concern was that might impact that land use.
There are quite a number of comments, and I'm not going to be able to read them all, partially because of time, but also because I'm trying to catch people who haven't spoken yet. Karen asked, due to traffic and safety considerations, alternative A is important for Fashion Island / Parkside / Norfolk area.
Thank you for that comment.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Due to traffic and safety considerations, alternative A is important for Fashion Island / Parkside / Norfolk area. And Sandy, I will be saving this so you'll have a record of these comments as well.
And I just want
Also,
to.
we're not asking for feedback on whether you like these or not. We just want to know if you have any changes or additions.
We're starting the right range, exactly.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's see. Need better mass transit and bike connections. Need for B and C. I'm going to leave that there. These are comments that we, Sandy, I'll make sure you get a copy of all these comments that are being made. I want to make sure we have enough time to continue the rest of, what else is there left?
So we have two portions of study area 1. So it's El Camino Real between downtown and 92, and then a small section of El Camino Real that's just south of Hillsdale Mall.
Okay, I think we're done with this for the time being. We can come back if we have time, but I want to make sure we get through the other two.
Okay, well, maybe we start with the north part of study area 1.
Yep. Okay. So study area 1 is El Camino Real Center. Like Brian just said, it's between 9th and 16th. Currently, it's a mix of regional, community, commercial, and high density multifamily. There's also some high office space right here, and it's like single family in the northern section. So in alternative A, you have mostly mixed use low in the northern section closer to 9th, and mostly mixed use medium down in the southern section. You have mostly mixed use medium, again, I'm sorry, mixed use medium in the northern section in alternative B, and mostly high residential in the southern section of alternative B. And then in alternative C, it's mostly just mixed use medium all the way through. As a refresher, mixed use low is 1 to 3 stories, about 9 to 39 dwelling units per acre. Mixed use medium is 4 to 7 stories, 40 to 99 dwelling units per acre. And mixed use high is 8+ stories, 100 to 200 dwelling units per acre. And then the office high is going to be 8+ stories. Residential high is also 8+ stories, 100 to 200 dwelling units per acre. So is there any questions, or is this the right range of scenarios? Are there any other scenarios that should be studied?
I do not have any comments or questions.
Didn't think so. Okay, next one. Okay, so now we're down at the southern part of El Camino Real. Currently, it's mostly regional, community to commercial, high density multifamily with a stretch along 37th, which is neighborhood commercial. So there's not too much change in these alternatives. This little box by parcel by FedEx, it remains residential medium. This shopping center along with FedEx along 37th is mixed use low. And then we have neighborhood commercial from 37th down to AutoZone and 39th Ave on the west side. We have commercial service on the east side of El Camino. So again,
sorry, Summer, just a reminder, for a commercial neighborhood, it's generally stores that would be like small businesses or stores that would be used by the immediately surrounding area, not necessarily like a destination, like maybe Hillsdale Mall, but something that would be used by people who live in that immediate vicinity.
Correct. Okay. So then on alternative B, it's mixed use low in that shopping center, just like A. And then the mixed use low continues down throughout El Camino Real on the western side. And then along 37th, the commercial turns into residential low. And then this strip of land is commercial neighborhood. So small offices, small stores, things that locals need, you can just walk to your neighborhood store and grab. Okay, so then we have this shopping center with FedEx on the north side of 37th turned into commercial neighborhood with the mixed use low down 37th and continuing until the AutoZone complex, and that is also going to change to neighborhood commercial. And then this strip of land over here is also neighborhood commercial.
Timekeeping wise, we have about 6 minutes left in this round before you guys have to trot off. What is commercial service? Question asked.
So commercial service is more of your more intense commercial uses. So it's maybe like auto repair, things like that, maybe some warehousing or some mini storage, things like that would be considered service commercial.
Okay. How/where is affordable housing along El Camino Real, or is that decided later?
That's going to be decided later, and affordable housing can also be incorporated into any of these residential or mixed use land use designations. It's not exclusive.
Great.
In fact, it has to be so.
Okay, that looks like it. 5 more minutes.
Yeah, were there any other questions on 8 or 3 that we could wrap back around to? Or is that for people satisfied?
I can't, it's hard for me to scroll back to previous questions, but I would definitely like if somebody still has a burning question about 3 or 8 to throw that into the chat. Somebody has their hand raised.
Say we have a raised hand.
Hey, Lenora.
Hi.
Leora, sorry.
Thank you. I had a question about, there are a couple zones where it looks like alternative B is like denser than alternative C.
Yeah, we actually had the same question in our last breakout too. So the ABC sort of gradient of getting more dense doesn't necessarily apply in individual study areas. It's the case across the city that all of our C alternatives combined together are the most additional housing, the most new units. But you might find in the individual study areas that that's not necessarily the case. So that you could see, I think, for example, maybe the northern part of study area 1. There are a couple of other areas where there's a little bit of a discrepancy where B in one particular part of the city might have more new units and new residents.
I would like to understand the improved transit methods, pedestrian ways, east-west bus and microbus. Where are they shown on the maps? Is that in the circulation, will be discussed in the circulation breakout? So we will be having a circulation, the circulation folks are coming to us.
Next round.
Huh?
It's the next round.
In the next round, yeah.
But if you have particular circulation comments about a study area and you want to share them here, we're happy to take those too.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions? We've got about 3 minutes left before our friends have to leave and trot off to their next location.
You can pull back up. I think study area 3 had the most comments. So just if anybody has a comment they didn't enter or that they did enter.
Well, now I have some questions. Will the EIR adopt wholesale alternatives or vary by area?
The EIR will adopt the preferred one, that the preferred land use for the entire city, which will be a part of the completed general plan.
Great.
So there won't be alternatives.
So it's time for you to leave us, apparently. They made you leave early. So it's time for you to go, you people. And while you're trailing off, I will read the remaining questions so that we have a record of it in the recording. So bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
See ya. One question, 3 should be alternative A based on traffic impacts alone without major reconstruction of the state highway ECR to Hillsdale. I'll add that to the comments. What type of new jobs are projected in these neighborhoods? That is a really good question, and I'm not sure we have an answer to it. But we'll see if we can come back to that. Hi, Carrie at Placeworks.
Hello, we have the circulation crew here.
Yay, hello, Brian.
Hello, I just got muted. Hi, I'm Brian Manford. I'm transportation planner with Nelson Nygaard. We're working with Placeworks. We're one of the consultants in charge of the circulation element. And so this session we'll be talking about the circulation element. I also have some folks from the city here to help answer questions if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening. Sue Ellen Atkinson. I'm a principal transportation planner with the city.
Hi, I'm Tracy Scrimalli. I'm a senior engineer in the Public Works Department.
So I will share my screen. One moment. And don't worry too much about what you're seeing yet. I'll be going through it in a little bit more detail. I know these maps are a little hard to read, so if you have any questions, we're happy to answer. I'll zoom out at first so you can see the legend, but just kind of more high level, what we're trying to do tonight is go over the range of alternatives that we're evaluating. And again, we're not picking between one or the other. We're trying to make sure that we're capturing the full range that we're trying to evaluate, so that when we make a preferred alternative, it's including everything that we need to include. And we want to hear from you. You're the experts in your community. You're invested in your community, and it's so great to have you here to share your thoughts and ideas with us. What these alternatives represent is the culmination of a few years of outreach where we heard different ideas from the community, and we tried to represent them in different alternatives. And then also looking at what are other cities doing that's exciting? What other ideas are there out there that seem like they might be a good fit for San Mateo? And these alternatives include approved plans, such as the Bike Master Plan and the Pedestrian Master Plan. And so a lot of the alternatives include those, or all three alternatives include those in some level. Things like the Caltrain at-grade crossings, which are shown in gray dots on every map, those are kind of not specific to any alternative. Those are included in all the alternatives. And those are long-range things that the city and Caltrain have been studying and trying to think of the right approach for. And so with that, I'll go into the three alternatives. So alternative A is about walkable neighborhoods, you see the orange line. If it's solid, it exists today, and if it's dotted, it's proposed. So the orange line is trails, so the Bay Trail and some kind of proposed enhancements to connect it into the city a little bit better. A new crossing, a multimodal crossing of US 101, also in orange. The purple is the bikeways. So it doesn't distinguish between the type, but the solid is existing again, and dotted is in the Bike Master Plan. The dotted green are kind of enhanced pedestrian walkways. That's from the Pedestrian Master Plan. The dark blue shading are missing sidewalks, and so that would be kind of completing those sidewalks. And it's a little bit hard to see, but on B Street downtown, there's 2 blocks here in the light blue, and that's pedestrianizing those 2 blocks. And then this long green line is, El Camino Real, and the green is kind of a bike and pedestrian enhancement of the El Camino, both to serve as a bikeway and kind of public realm improvements. The next alternative, alternative B, is really thinking about prioritizing and enhancing the regional connections. So Caltrain, of which San Mateo has 3 stations, has 2023, 24 electrification and other service improvements, and then kind of long range 2040 has a business plan with really high frequencies. And so to really make sure that all of San Mateo can benefit from that, looking at, is there kind of a transit connection that we can make to Fashion Island and to the community college and study area 6 to connect people to Hillsdale, which will have the best service. And also looking at improvements to the highway on-ramps or bus only lanes, so that the buses aren't going to be getting stuck in traffic in getting to Caltrain, and then looking at kind of a bus rapid transit or other type of bus enhancements to service levels and the experience along El Camino. So that's what makes alternative B a little bit different. Again, you're still having the bike, the trail improvements, those types of things. 1 minute. And then alternative C, it has a lot of those same elements. So you still have the public realm enhancements to El Camino, you have the bus rapid transit, you have the transit connection, but we're also looking at, is there some kind of microtransit, automated vehicle, innovative service in addition to that, that can better connect people to Caltrain or to downtown. Looking at in downtown, is there kind of an urban design, street changes, you know, where you're doing forced right turns or plazas, other types of interventions to calm traffic, reduce the amount of kind of through trips and making it more of a destination, more things like plazas and wider sidewalks, that type of stuff to really calm traffic and enhance downtown. So those are the different alternatives we're looking at. And now we'd like to hear from you in the chat or raise your hand if there's things that we're missing or other ideas that you have or comments you'd like to make.
I have some questions here. Are any improvements to the Caltrain system included, specifically in relationship to noise control?
Yeah, so because Caltrain is its own agency and owns their tracks, the general plan does consider noise is one of the required elements. And but Caltrain, these alternatives assume that Caltrain business plan is going forward as they've proposed it. And so the assumptions are that they're continuing as what's already in their plans. So yeah,
Great.
hopefully that answers that.
Circulation relates strongly to parking, especially in downtown and transit areas, so people who don't live within a half a mile also have access. Please address whether parking is part of this evaluation.
So parking, I think in Joanna's presentation, you know, parking is something that's handled at the kind of city ordinance level. And so there may be policies in the general plan that speak to parking, but it's not necessarily an alternative. But, you know, things like, you know, part of this is about enhancing all the different ways that people can get downtown and other places. So trying to make improvements to allow people who don't live near there to still be able to access those areas as well. This does include, again, adopted plans. So a few years back, San Mateo adopted a downtown parking study. So those types of things are already included in this as well.
Great. Did the alternative A consider pedestrian and bike connections near the 92-101 interchange and the Hillsdale 101 interchange? These areas appear to have the least connectivity between East and West San Mateo. That's one question.
Thanks for bringing that up. So the blue dots, and I may have missed it in going over it, the blue dots represent enhanced safety improvements for pedestrians at those interchanges. And then the sidewalk and the bike lane in teal, in purple and dark blue represent those improvements as well.
Nick also has this question, which is, did you also consider alternatives to slow traffic near 25th Street and the Hillsdale Shopping Center where foot traffic is deterred by heavy car traffic?
The things like slow traffic is at a little bit more the implementation level. And so the city right now is about to, I think they're scoping a complete streets plan that will be starting in the next year or so. And so that's going to look at really at this zoomed in street level traffic calming. It'll be for all modes, but things like crosswalks and traffic calming and that type of stuff. So this is looking at a little bit higher level than that, but things like pedestrian improvements or pedestrian safety are things that as a priority of yours, those are things we want to hear tonight.
Specific Caltrain annoyance is the late night and early morning horns. In 20 years, we may see new transit options. Has light rail on the 92 bridge ever been considered?
Thanks for the comment. I think too, and this speaks to some of the grade crossings. I believe over time, as those grade crossings are eliminated, if that's possible, it will reduce the need for the horn, but I think they still will have to sound to a certain degree. And a lot of that is federal train safety regulations. We're not currently considering light rail on 92, so that's great to hear, and that's something we can look into.
Okay, one more question. With the pandemic and closing of B Street to traffic, is the city looking at street closures for enhanced pedestrian experiences into the general plan?
So in alternative A, there's the kind of permanent pedestrianization on B Street, and then in alternative C, kind of looking at a combination of, sorry, it's loading slow. All the light blue represent kind of that public realm enhancement, pedestrianization, maybe not fully, still allowing access for loading and drop off and stuff, but kind of pedestrian enhancement downtown.
Great. I just want to note that it's halfway through the session. So if you have more questions, Ken, you had a question that I didn't understand, which perhaps you might want to retype it in. What is the increased trans from area 6 and 10 to Caltrain? I'm not exactly sure what that meant. If you want to rewrite it, or you can unmute yourself if you prefer to just ask. I can ask you to unmute. Why don't you do that?
Yeah, thank you. I think areas 6 and 10 are sort of isolated right now from Caltrain and El Camino Real. So what are the ideas to really keep people from getting into cars in those two areas, but instead getting down to Caltrain and El Camino Real?
Yeah, so in both alternatives, B and C, there's, it's again at this kind of higher level because it would rely on some kind of partnership with Samtrans or another entity, but high level in the yellow line shows a transit connection to area 6 into El Camino and Hillsdale, and then the same for study area 10 and Fashion Island. And so that was one of the things we heard in our outreach of improving east-west connections and also making sure that increased or potential growth in these areas is also met with improved services, like you said.
Thanks. Next question. Have discussions been held with Foster City regarding the value of interconnectivity proposals?
That's a great question. I don't know if anyone from the city can speak to that, but and how overall the general plan is about the city itself, but some of the policies that we're working on, which is a separate piece that isn't finished, but is looking at how the city partners with the regional transit agencies as well as the neighbors.
Thanks. More questions or comments? I think, Brian, you're getting off easy here.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Everyone loves to talk about transportation usually. Yeah, so if there's anything, missing, if there's if you want to see, more pedestrian stuff or more bike stuff, or you're worried about, parking, those types of things, anything like that, is great to hear. If you don't see it on these maps yet.
Here's a question. Can the general plan tie development scenarios to completion of transit improvements, i.e. timing and phasing?
That's a great question. It's not necessarily at the general plan level. I think the existing general plan has a policy that new development kind of addresses impacts. How that gets translated into policies and what the city is legally able to require of development is, you know, the detail there. But you know, for example, the new transportation or a new project has to pay into the transportation impact fee, and so that helps fund the improvements that for the city that are needed to meet the impacts of that development. So it's not necessarily a cap based on the amount of transit service, but it can help fund those types of improvements.
We have Wendy has a general observation, which is this seems to emphasize east-west transit, whereas commutes in the Bay Area tend to go north and south.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. I think, and that's very true. And again, one of the assumptions, and especially that alternative B is built around, is that the regional transit connection north-south is going to use Caltrain and the planned improvements to Caltrain in 2023, 24, and 2040. And so the reason you're seeing, you know, this big yellow line and not seeing Caltrain is because we're just assuming that Caltrain is going to be there. And so we're trying to get people to Caltrain so that they can get north and south, and so that more parts of the city have access to Caltrain. And then also showing El Camino here in yellow, having the bus rapid transit, bus improvements, so that those regional trips or local can be made faster and more conveniently on transit.
Other questions or comments? We have about 8 minutes left.
And this is Joanna, since I've joined you, and since we seem to have a little bit of extra time, if there are any questions that I can answer related to the presentation earlier, I'm happy to do that as well, take a stab at that.
Not seeing anything.
That's totally fine.
How will the city deal with the huge volume of commuters cutting through the neighborhood to get to 92?
You know, cut through San Mateo, partly because of its location, kind of has the benefit of having these regional highways, but also kind of the challenges of having these regional highways. And so there's definitely policies in the existing, and I think in the future general plan that are going to, you know, try and address cut through traffic. But you know, the alternatives are really looking at enhancements and connections for San Mateo, and things like you know, cut through traffic are a little bit harder to show as like a specific plan. But I don't know, and there's also a neighborhood traffic safety or traffic calming program, but I don't know if anyone from the city wants to speak to any of that either.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about this. Is Tracy. I'm from Public Works. So that yes, the city has a neighborhood traffic management program. You can contact Public Works with a specific neighborhood concern. And then also a few years ago, the city did the traffic forums, which was really a citywide outreach effort to hear what the community's main concerns were and put together traffic action plans for each neighborhood. And that was done a couple years ago, and we are still working on actually implementing the traffic action plans, which were the main concerns from each of the neighborhoods.
I think I remember, Brian, that in alternative A, just as an example, the one about prioritizing walkable neighborhoods, one of the particular types of improvements that is contemplated there is, I think these blue circles on the map are illustrating pedestrian crossing improvements and maybe other improvements that are actually focused on some of these interchange areas where, you know, right now, maybe folks are experiencing unsafe conditions from traffic that's really mostly trying to get on and off those more regional roadways. And so potentially some pedestrian improvements or safety improvements there might also, while they might be intended primarily to aid pedestrians, they would also have the potential to affect traffic patterns and the choices of drivers who might be cutting through neighborhoods.
We have 4 minutes left. I'm going to ask a couple more questions. How has the city evaluated the increased use of electric vehicles and the need for infrastructure to support EVs?
So another element of that was recently adopted is the Climate Action Plan. And so the Climate Action Plan does have specific strategies that address electric vehicles and kind of the electric needs. And then from the infrastructure level, and then the general plan policies, again, you can't really see it on a map in circulation alternatives. We'll also be looking at making sure the city is setting policies to support future technologies, including electrification of the vehicle fleets. And it's also part of the transit piece too of, you know, does the bus rapid transit on El Camino, is that some kind of an electric bus or require enhancements so that you have a cleaner vehicle fleet for the transit as well?
For folks who are interested in long-range planning issues in San Mateo, I definitely urge you to check out the Climate Action Plan, or CAP, if you haven't yet. It's on the city's website. But that is a whole document about how the city can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And that's an example of where that's an adopted plan. And so all three of these alternatives will need to make sure that they're consistent with that CAP and furthering the strategies that have already been adopted in the Climate Action Plan.
We have about 2 minutes left before our hosts are going to have to skedaddle off to their next room. Let me get to one more question. Is an existing bikeway denoted on Hillsdale Boulevard from 101 westward? A designated bike path doesn't exist and is needed for safe travel.
Yeah, so bikeway here means any kind of bike infrastructure in the bike master plan. And so that could even be a shared street that's a designated bike route. So that may be what you're seeing there. But it's helpful to note that that's something you'd like to see.
Last comment. What consideration is being given to getting residents to BART, which is also a large provider of transportation to SF and East Bay?
So the way BART and Caltrain are currently operated, the Millbrae station is the transfer point. So part of it is getting to Caltrain to get to BART, and then working with, it's not shown on here, but there's regional, Sam Transit is doing a regional express bus pilot as well.
Great. You've run out of time, and it's time for you to skedaddle now off to your next and final round while we wait for new people to show up here. Thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Enjoy your last session.
Thank you.
I thought we agreed you're going to be telling jokes during this interim.
I forgot.
Forgot to have any good jokes ready?
No. I have nothing. I have absolutely nothing. How many people are still on with us, do you think, in the whole thing? Are people staying on for most of it?
Yeah, I think so. From the breakout rooms, everybody's divided up right now, so it's not as easy to tell. But yeah, we're doing great.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a great group. A lot of really great questions and comments, and hopefully you'll feel, even if we didn't actually get to one of your comments or questions, that you'll know that we definitely are including it in the summary of comments and so forth. So we're getting Linda.
Joanna,
and
are we
Lindell.
ending at 8:25, or do we have a full 25-minute during this breakout?
We're going to take a full 25 minutes. We were a few minutes late getting you guys into your breakout rooms, and we apologize for that. But we don't want to shortchange you of any time. So we are going to just stay a few minutes so to make sure you get the full amount of time.
I just want to make sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're ready to go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Lee, an associate planner with City of San Mateo. I will be facilitating the study group discussion. I'm joined with my co-facilitator, Rendo Bustos. He's a senior planner, also with the city. I'm also joined by Nikki Vu. He's a housing specialist. And so I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay. So as a reminder, in this breakout group, you'll be focusing on study areas 2, 6, 9, and 10. And we're not looking to make a decision on, either of the alternatives or picking one. It's really looking at, is this the right range of alternatives? Are there any ideas or changes missing that you would like to see staff consider as we further evaluate it? And so to start, we're going to start in order with study area 2. So study area 2 is the Bell Mateo Molly Stone Shopping Center area. The existing general plan uses are neighborhood commercial with high density multifamily residential uses allowed. There's service commercial west of El Camino Real with neighborhood commercial and high density multifamily uses. And so looking at the different alternatives, A, B, and C for this particular study area. So A would represent the least change to this area, whereas C would introduce mixed uses west of El Camino Real. And B would look at incorporating a low mixed use within the core center of the study area. And some key things to note, so around Molly Stone Market, Bell Mateo Bowl, we're looking at bringing in low residential uses through all different A, B, and C alternative. And if you have any comments, questions, feel free to put it in the chat. If you'd like to speak and share your comment, feel free to raise your hand and we'll go ahead and unmute you.
No questions or comments in the chat at this point.
Okay. So some things we've heard in past breakout group discussions, there was a lot of positive feedback and support for residential uses at the Bell Mateo Bowl area. They feel that the current use of it is, not meeting its potential is what we've heard.
Why don't we go on to the next one, and we can always return to this if we need to.
Sounds good. Thanks, Diana.
Sure.
So the next study area, number 6, this is the Campus Drive area. Currently, the site or the study area is mostly composed of office uses along Campus Drive. And on the south, this is the Lowerwood Shopping Center, which is classified as neighborhood commercial. And so for the study area, some key things to note, alternative C would change the office uses to medium residential, whereas in B, it would keep some office use, but concentrate it in this select area to medium office. And A would look at retaining, most of the existing low office use, but with medium residential. And for A, B, and C, this is consistent with a planning project that was approved here, Peninsula Heights, which is for 290 residential units. And the other changes to note for Lowerwood Shopping Center, A and B would look at, turning it into a mixed use low type of use, and C would look at a commercial neighborhood, which is actually consistent with what it is now.
I have a question from Maris. Area 2 alternates B and C. seem flipped in density. That was from our last one. So maybe we just make a note of that to go back to it. Don't worry about it right now, I guess.
Okay. Thanks, Diana.
Mm-hmm. Anybody have comments on this particular study area 6?
How does everyone feel about, do they like more offices, or would they prefer to see more residential uses here? How do you feel about Lowerwood Shopping Center changing to mixed use?
I've got a comment, a question. Can more residential high be included here?
Certainly. We're looking for, all the input tonight, so we'll make note of that.
Yeah, and some prior themes that we heard on this one too in past groups was recommendations for added open space, walking trails to take advantage of the views from that area.
Maris, to clarify, residential high be included here in lieu of office.
Thank you
for that.
So for A and B.
That's all I have for now.
Okay. Yeah, we heard a lot of comments. I think, Rendell, you had mentioned like bike, hiking, connecting Campus Drive to 26 Ave.
Yeah, there was a question of the potential for vehicular connection between campus and 26. That's not slated now. Under Peninsula Heights' application, it's slated for connection for pedestrians and bicyclists, not vehicles.
I've got a comment here. If more residential in this area, there need to be better links to Caltrain and also more parks.
Great comment. Thank you. Okay, I think I'm going to move on to the next study area. All right, so the next study area, number 9, this is the Hillsdale Norfolk area. And so the existing uses, Kaiser Medical Office Building is on this parcel. Across from it is a Hillsdale Inn. And on the right, it's the Marina Plaza Shopping Center. And so most of the uses here are neighborhood commercial, ranging also with regional community commercial with multifamily uses on the outskirts. And on this parcel, this is actually the Atria Senior Living Assisted Living Center. So key things to note about this study area. So for the Marina Plaza Shopping Center, A looks at keeping it as a community regional use, whereas B would introduce mixed use medium, but also keeping some regional commercial use here. And C would be changing it to looking at commercial neighborhood with regional commercial. Now, the medical office would stay the same in all 3 alternatives as an office use. And there are residential uses being considered off on East Hillsdale Court along this end of the study area for alternative B. And you'll notice that, low residential is being proposed for these 3 parcels between A, B, and C. This is consistent with the planning project that the city has received for residential development here. Yeah, so feel free to enter your comments, questions in the chat.
I think some of the more frequent comments that we've gotten on this one was just the reaction to and an observation of just the circulation issues along the east end.
There were also comments, I think, favoring having mixed use, having residential and commercial and services linked together.
Yeah, particularly neighborhood commercial was what I think we heard a few times on this area.
just a note that we're halfway through, and
Okay.
I have a comment. I appreciate the alternative considerations for Marina Plaza. This area seems to need easier access via transportation to really help it grow and thrive.
Yep, great comment. Thank you.
Someone comments traffic at Saratoga is at level F now. And then a question, is there still demand for regional commercial?
Yeah, it's a good question. So just to help everyone visualize what regional commercial looks like, it's, Bridgepoint, for example, that's considered regional commercial. It's more of the big, larger shopping centers that attracts not just residents, but also visitors from outside San Mateo to drive in. And so neighborhood commercial would be, as Rendell had mentioned earlier, kind of a smaller scale and meant for residents that live in the nearby area to walk to access more easily.
Yeah, something like 25th Avenue.
Yeah.
Is very local feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What about mixed use residential commercial housing with lots of neighborhood serving commercial?
Is that a question from participant or you?
No, that's a question from a speaker from Maxine for Marina Plaza. What about mixed use residential / residential commercial?
Yeah,
housing
so
with lots of neighborhood serving commercial.
Yeah, so an alternative B, mixed use medium is proposed, and this could include anything from residential, office, commercial. And so it is being considered an alternative B. Okay. Well, let's move on to the next study area.
Let's.
Okay, great. So the last study area tonight, this is 10, Bridgepoint. And so it's characterized, by the existing executive office uses on the outskirts, the Marriott Hotel, that's under regional community commercial. And most of the Bridgepoint shopping center is a mix of regional community commercial with high density multifamily uses allowed. And so in the three different alternatives, A would look at maintaining, the lease change to the Bridgepoint shopping center. It would keep it as regional commercial, whereas in B, it would introduce low mixed use. And so again, that could include, potential office, residential, and commercial mixed together. And in C, it would look at bringing in medium residential uses. So it wouldn't be a mixed use. Other key things to note, looks like, we're preserving offices where the Sony building is along this edge of the study area. It's a mix of, high-rise office to medium-rise office. Yeah, those are the main changes. It's really focused on the Bridgepoint shopping center, considering, mixed use in B or medium residential in C. So feel free to share your comments, questions with us in the chat.
My guess is that people are quite towards the end of their.
Yes. I know it's been a long. Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate
Yeah,
we appreciate everyone's participation at 8:20 p.m.
Yes.
Oh, here's a great comment. I worked in this area for many years and would love to see more amenities like lunch options.
Yeah, great comment.
That's something we heard in a prior group as well. Generally, folks were
only
supportive.
So many times you can go to Chipotle. Let's be honest.
Yeah, generally folks were supportive of the housing, but wanting to locate more neighborhood serving. So,
yeah, there was a comment
retail
about
and restaurant uses.
Like a farmer's market, to consider that.
Here's a question. Will green space / parks be incorporated into these plans?
It could be. So for a lot of mixed use, commercial development projects, there is a open space component that's required. And so that's when the city could require that. Yeah.
Yeah, we also see that when developers do provide open space, they're often just as a public benefit. It's very easy for them to do it when they do provide open space to make it public. So it's a very common public benefit we'll see.
Why not high residential in C?
That's a good question. Yeah, we'll go ahead and take that input. So a lot of these alternatives, it was determined with public input and like public hearing processes in 2019, but none of this is set, and anything you share today, we'll go ahead and collect it and continue to use it to refine our different alternatives.
Comments. There are a fair number of children in this general area. Parks and larger areas are important for play, not hardscape.
Yeah, great comment. Yeah, we've heard a lot of actually questions from other breakout room discussions about, are we considering schools and, sort of the demand and impact on infrastructure. And so, yes, it's definitely something that as we continue further in the general plan, we'll be studying all of that, all the technical analyses and reports once we, refine and pick one study area to focus on, or not study area, alternative. Right.
Mixed use medium for option B, ? It would be helpful to create a vibrant placemaking. That's in quotes.
Yeah, great comment. Do you know how much time they've given us for this last breakout?
I thought they were going to go past 8:25, but I don't know. I haven't gotten any further. I had a flurry of texts, and now I have nothing.
We have about 8 minutes left.
How many?
About 8 minutes.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer.
If we have time, would it be a good idea to go back to study area 2 since we skipped it earlier?
Sure.
For sure.
There was a comment from about study area 2. Hang on a second. Let me go back and find it. I'm not seeing it. Area 2 alternates B and C seem flip-flopped in density, ?
I see.
I think this was similar to the comment that Brian answered earlier in one of the other ones, is that, if you look at just one study area, they may not go from lowest to medium to highest intensification, but collectively with the other study areas in the mix, then they do. So looking at one study area may not give you a full view of what the totality might be citywide.
Yeah.
Right, and to add on to that, I think the methodology they were describing was that alternative A is like the least amount of development. B is more spread out, but like a medium amount of development everywhere. And C has the most, but it's concentrated in like the downtown and near the station areas. So that's why it might not seem like least to most every single time.
Okay, I just got a text that says at 8:29, we will ask you to start wrapping up and rooms will close at 8:31. Yay. So we have 3 minutes.
We're almost there, everyone.
Here's a question. Okay. How is the dividing line in the shopping center determined? I'm not sure I'm assuming that is in 2.
Yes. Would they like to speak and kind of elaborate on their question?
You want to, Maris, where are you? You want to unmute and speak to us? No. Yes.
Thanks, Diana. That was actually directed at study area 10.
Oh, okay.
For the changes in land use.
Yeah. You can tell we're very excited to have interaction with participants. Go ahead. So study area 10. Are you talking about this division?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I believe Target is in this area.
Correct.
Right, more of the higher demand type of stores are on this end, whereas this one is I'm trying to recall what the stores are, like the old Ulta.
Ulta, Cost Plus.
Yeah.
Total Wine, Bed Bath & Beyond, Hobby Lobby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't recall if that was intentional, the division of, you know, the kind of western side versus the eastern side. I think, yeah, Linda, you're right that it just so happens that on the eastern side, the Target side, it just tends to have more activity and more regional serving. So that's where you're seeing those preserved on all three. A good question, a good comment.
So I'm getting a message. I don't know if you're seeing it. If you haven't already, move on to the recap discussion.
Okay. So let's do that. Let me just pull up my notes. Am I in the right board, Nikki, for the?
So it starts on slide 13.
Okay, great. Thank you. So to recap what we've heard tonight for study area 2, the Bell Mateo Molly Stone. We actually didn't get too much feedback on this. There was a question about whether B and C was flipped in density. And so Diana gave a really good answer, and also Nikki as well, you know, that, you know, the high level summary of alternative A, B, and C may not be reflected in the individual study areas. And so moving on, study area 6, Campus Drive area. You know, we've heard comments about providing more links to Caltrain as well as parks. And another comment related to C is, you know, considering more residential high density. Study area 9, Hillsdale, Norfolk area. There was a lot of comments about circulation and traffic, actually. There's a comment about Saratoga, traffic being rated F. Talk about mixed use residential housing, having more connection to the services at Marina. Another comment we heard, this area, well, the Marina Plaza Shopping Center, you know, providing easier access to transit could potentially help this study area thrive. And lastly, there was a question, you know, is there still demand for neighborhood commercial? Right, so we have 50 seconds left. Thank you all for sticking with us, participating. You know, we really appreciate all your input, and we're going to continue to gather feedback. There's going to be an online survey that's being launched. So if you felt like this was just too much to digest and provide feedback on, feel free to take your time and complete the survey to give us, you know, additional comments.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.